Good evening, everyone. Hannah Malang here at the Midwest Emmys. I've got Farrah here. Farrah, tell me what you've won tonight.
So we won for two consequential series, actually, some work that we did this year. One was a series that was called Hell to Heartland. So we went to Africa, to both Kenya and Somalia, and we really went to tell the stories of immigrants and refugees. 1 out of 5 Somalis here in the Twin Cities have family in refugee camps, and many of them are separated from their families. There was also a massive famine, the height of the famine going on at that point when we went to Africa. So those stories were part of a series called Hell to Heartland. One of those pieces called Beyond Hunger, the famine piece of that story, won for an Emmy. And then we also won for a Teen to Terrorist. So we were the only TV station in the world to get an interview with a terrorist who was convicted among a group of 9 people in the government's largest ISIS recruiting case. So he is now at the moment serving time in a federal prison. But at that time, he gave only one interview, and it was on the phone. He was sitting in a jail cell, a federal jail cell. So we had to figure out how to turn that into 5 TV stories, a phoner, in essence. My photographer was absolutely incredible, came up with an ingenious way to be able to tell a phoner in 5 really interesting stories of this kid's life.
Wow. So tell me, how did you get that story? That just seems like an incredible thing that you were able to do.
So I always tell interns and places where I talk that on the other side of a no is a yes. So if you never ask, you'll never know. Now, it was really complicated, and there were months and months of undercover secret meetings, and I had to talk to him a lot, and people around him a lot. And eventually, I think he felt that his story was important, that it wasn't getting told, and that it would never be told. You just cannot interview terrorists. And so we may not have ever known it. But I think he also made a decision that he was going to trust. And it was an important piece of that mechanism, that if he could trust somebody to tell the story, in this case it happened to be me, but developing those sources and developing that relationship took months.
I'm sure. Going back to your Hell to Heartland story, tell me about the inspiration for that.
So the inspiration for that were really the stories of families divided, families separated from each other. What happens to them? How do they deal with this? We actually followed, we went to Africa to find a 3-year-old girl who had been separated from her mother. So 3 years ago, and please bear with me because this has an ending that you really want to hear about. So 3 years ago, this woman named Famo had a baby in the refugee camp, in the world's largest refugee camp called Dadaab. Just at that moment when she had the baby, she also got refugee status in the United States. So 1% of all refugees get status. And so she had to make a decision. The government said to her, well, you can either take your status and your refugee status, or you can stay here, but you can't take your baby with you because your baby is not a refugee. So she had to make a choice, and she decided that she would come to the US and then try to get her baby here. And that, for 3 years, was what she tried to do. When the president signed the executive order in February, in essence, the entire process stopped. And so Anfa, little Anfa, who's 3 years old, wasn't going anywhere. She was stuck in this refugee camp. So we went to find her in the refugee camp, and we found her.
Wow.
She was living in this little hut with her grandparents. She was sleeping on the ground. The rations for food have been really cut in the refugee camp, so she didn't have much food. And we told her story, and we shined a light. And a week ago Thursday, so 9 days ago, at 9:28 p.m. on a Thursday night, Anfa came to the United States. And she came to see her mother, who she has not seen since she was a baby. It was an incredible reunion at the Minneapolis St. Paul airport, and it took 7 months of pressing the government and asking the questions and wanting to know the answers about why a 3-year-old is separated from her mother. So it was an incredible ending to a story that we don't always get to hear, we don't always get to tell, and it makes it really worthwhile. And I said as I accepted my award, but I mean this both for me and for all of us. We're here to celebrate tonight journalism and storytelling. And these are the consequences of powerful storytelling, that we can make a difference in people's lives, and we should. And you know, my station did what very few stations in the country could do, will do. They sent me to Africa. They gave me the time to tell these stories. I was in Africa, both in Kenya and Somalia for 3 months, rather 3 weeks. And then I got a little while to put these stories together. And then they gave me time to tell the teen to terrorist stories, to make the connections, to have the time to convince him. And then we got to air that on our air for a series of 5 stories. So, powerful storytelling matters, and we have to keep telling good stories.
Wow, well, that work is undoubtedly deserving of these awards. So congratulations for all of it, and thank you for sharing.
This team effort, thank you.
Yes,
My
well,
pleasure,
thank you. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.